We are in part one of Descartes' discourse on method using the Hackett edition, and we are coming soon to his description of what he learned in school, and more to the point, what he didn't learn, and that's going to be terribly important and interesting. But I think we need one full video looking at the two paragraphs preceding this section and following what we covered last time. So I think I'd better just read this next paragraph and then comment on it. Descartes says, "Thus my purpose here is not to teach the method that everyone ought to follow in order to conduct his reason well, but merely to show how I have tried to conduct my own. Those who take it upon themselves to give precepts must regard themselves as more competent than those to whom they give them. And if they are found wanting in the least detail, they are to blame. But putting forward this essay merely as a story, or if you prefer, as a fable, in which among some examples one can imitate, one will perhaps also find many others which one will have reason not to follow. I hope that it will be useful to some without being harmful to anyone, and that everyone will be grateful to me for my frankness." Okay, just on the surface of the text, let's comment on the context. He began the discourse on method by saying that everyone has reason. Reason is the essential human characteristic. It's the ability to make good judgments or to distinguish truth from falsehood. And everyone has reason. Reason doesn't come in degrees. You have it, I have just as much as you have just as much as I do. But we aren't all using reason in the same way. It's not enough to have reason. The important thing is to use it properly, so we need the right method for reason to work with. And so Descartes now says, I'm not teaching you the method everyone should follow, I'm teaching you the method that worked for me. So now let's look just a little deeper in this paragraph. It sure looks like maybe there's some false humility here. Like Descartes saying, the important thing is the method by which we use reason. I'm going to give you the method. I mean, look at the title. It's the discourse on the method for conducting one's reason well and for seeking truth in the sciences. So, the method we need is the one he's going to teach. And here he's like, it's just my method. I'm not telling you have to use it. And maybe I got something useful to offer, but, I'm sure I made plenty of mistakes, and maybe you can find them. And in the previous paragraph, as you may recall, he said something about how this book is an opportunity for him to learn about his mistakes from having people read the book and correct him. And it almost seems like false humility. Like, I'm giving you the method, but I'm pretending to just be giving you what, seems to work for me, and I'm sure I'm wrong about a lot of stuff. He's just being polite and falsely humble. It's possible to read the paragraph that way. I lean towards that reading myself, but, there's often subtleties that escape me. Now, there is this other grounds for suspicion that I want to mention in this paragraph. He says he's putting forward this essay merely as a story, or if you prefer, as a fable. So you can read the whole book somewhat skeptically and say, Descartes' a dang filthy liar, and here he's letting us in on the secret. He's telling us the whole thing is a myth. The whole story of his life and how he pursues reason in this book is going to be largely made up. It's a story or fable. I will not go so far. That's the way I've noticed Straussians tend to read the history of philosophy, referring here to a particular tradition in political theory, following the writings of Leo Strauss. So it is possible, though. It is possible to read the book with a significant degree of skepticism and think Descartes is lying. He's putting forward this essay as a story or fable, and here he's letting us in on the secret that half of what follows is a bunch of lies. I don't think it's necessary to read Descartes that way. I don't accuse him of lying in this book. I do, however, accuse him of being very sneaky. And I say, at least this much, in agreement with the Straussians, that we certainly have cause to be suspicious. Now, if you want to look at my stupid pun joke on the concept of YouTube Shorts, you can Google Philosophy Shorts, Denim and Descartes, or find it on my channel somewhere, or if I've had the sense to set up a playlist for all the Descartes videos, you should be able to find it on the Descartes playlist. And if you watch that, I think you'll find probably towards the end of the video some of my reasons to be suspicious about Descartes, with the stuff he says about how I'm a good Catholic, but he's systematically undermining the metaphysics, in fact, outright denying the metaphysics that is central to Catholic thinking, Catholic philosophy, also Catholic theology. So I think we have grounds to be suspicious of Descartes. I don't see any need to call him a liar, but there are aspects of this text, the Discourse and Method by Descartes, that are a little shady. Let me see if I can come up with a clear way of stating this. And I don't know if I can say this clearly and succinctly, but I'll try to say this more succinctly and a little more clearly if I can. I'm not aware of any reason we need to call Descartes a liar in this book, but we do have grounds for suspicion of him, and more or less it's something like this. Why I'm not aware that we need to say anything he's saying here is an outright lie. He's going to be very sneaky with what he says, what he chooses not to say, and how he says what he says. Let me just give, let me see if I can make this a little more clear by maybe giving two other examples. So I mentioned the example that's in that other video, Philosophy Shorts, Denham and Descartes, but the paragraph we're just reading and its context suggests some other examples. So we have grounds to be suspicious, I say. He says, even though he's giving you the method he thinks we need, he's also saying, I'm not pretending this is the method for everyone. This is just what seems to work for me, and I'm sure I made plenty of mistakes, and I hope you can all correct me. And it looks kind of like false humility, which is the reading of that remark, which I'm inclined to take myself. So, hesitate to call him a liar, but grounds for suspicion. So in context, he's about to say really shocking things about what he's learned in school. He's going to say things like, I had the best education available in an entire continent, if not the entire world, and basically I learned nothing from it. I don't get any knowledge except a few things from math in my education. And he includes theology in this. And so he's saying theology doesn't give us knowledge. Now, he says he believes it, but he says it's not knowledge. Now, if you know anything about the history of medieval philosophy, you know that the whole point of thinking through faith and reason in people like Augustine, Anselm, Aquinas is to integrate faith and reason. The whole point is to have knowledge of the things that we know by faith. And know by faith is exactly the right phrase, because knowledge does involve faith, and faith is just Greek pistis, Latin fides. Faith is trust. Of course, knowledge relies on trust. Augustine's point that this is how you know everything you know about medicine and geography and history. Augustine's point is perfectly legitimate, but the same even works for science. You don't know Tokyo exists except by trusting people, unless you're one of those people who's been to Tokyo. And if you haven't, well, you can trust me when I tell you Bulawayo, Zimbabwe exists. I've been there, but you have to trust me. You have to trust people to know these geographical facts, unless you've also been to Bulawayo, Zimbabwe yourself. Okay, medicine, history, science. Yes, science. Even science relies on trust. Now, there's maybe a lesser degree of trust necessary for science to work, but science still relies on people saying, I boiled the water while measuring the temperature, and it boiled at 100 degrees Celsius. And you can repeat this experiment for yourself, but you still have to trust other people who said they repeated it. If science relies on the replicability of experiments, then either you personally have to run all the experiments multiple times by yourself, or to make all this actually useful, you can trust people who say they ran the experiment and these are the results, and they can trust you when you say I ran the experiments and I get the same results. In this situation, there's a mutual trust, or maybe you could say a balance, an integration of testing, I test, you test, plus we're trusting each other on who got the right, on who got these results, so we know we got the right results and the right conclusions. science works something like that, and even science relies to a significant degree upon trust. So I'm spending way too much time reviewing the backstory on faith and reason and Augustine and trust. I'm sorry, I need to get back to Descartes. So the point, though, is that knowledge and faith can be the same thing. That's the medieval epistemology you get from Augustine. You'll find this in Aquinas. There is no doubt different Latin words you can use for knowledge. There's going to be some nuance and so on. But the general idea that theology does not give us knowledge, which Descartes is about to tell us in part 1 here, is an astounding statement for someone who claims to be a good Catholic. This is hugely, I need to find the right adjective. I almost want to say rebellious statement against his tradition. I'm going to leave it at that because I can't find the right adjective, except to say it's a bold and very significant and astounding statement that theology does not give us knowledge. So we have grounds to be suspicious of the things Descartes says. That doesn't necessarily mean he's lying, but he's going to spin things in a certain way. I revered our theology, he'll tell us. Meanwhile, he accuses it of, contrary to the entire medieval philosophical, theological tradition, he's going to say it doesn't give us knowledge. So there's something weird here. Not necessarily lies, but certainly grounds for suspicion. Let's move on. Let's move on. I'm talking too much about this. I have been nourished on letters since my childhood, and because I was convinced that by means of them one could acquire a clear and assured knowledge of everything that is useful in life, I had a tremendous desire to master them. But as soon as I had completed this entire course of study, at the end of which one is ordinarily received into the ranks of the learned, I completely changed my mind. Here's a key sentence. This is maybe the number one sentence. Actually, no. The first 3 sentences, 1, 2, 3, 4. The first 4 sentences about reason and method, those are probably the most important sentences of part 1. But this one is a close second. This is an important rival for the place of most important sentence of part 1. For I found myself confounded by so many doubts and errors that it seemed to me that I had not gained any profit from my attempt to teach myself, except that more and more I had discovered my ignorance. More and more I had discovered my ignorance. The whole point of his education was to gain knowledge, and it totally failed. All he did was achieve an awareness of his own ignorance. And yet I was at one of the most renowned schools of Europe, where I thought there must be learned men, if in fact any such men existed anywhere on earth. The implication is there are no learned men anywhere. At least not until I come along and give you the method that will give us knowledge. You see how Descartes is simultaneously saying, I have so much respect for tradition and for my teachers, so much awareness of my own failures and my own fallibility. I give this book to readers hoping I can learn something by having them correct my mistakes. But at the same time, he's also saying there's no knowledge anywhere, except maybe a little bit from math, except now. And you're welcome. I'm giving you knowledge, he says. There I learned everything the others were learning, and not content with the disciplines we were taught there, I'd gone through all the books I could lay my hands on that treated those disciplines, considered the most curious and most unusual. I knew what judgments the others were making about me, and I did not at all see that I was rated inferior to my fellow students, even though there already were some among them who were destined to take the place of our teachers. He's like, in school, my classmates noticed I was like maybe the best student, even though some of them were obviously going to become the teachers of the next generation. They were going to replace their teachers, and even they knew I was the best. And finally, our age seemed to me to be just as flourishing and as fertile in good minds as any of the preceding ones. So I'm better than the people who are replacing my own teachers, he's saying. And this age is at least as smart and informed as any other. This made me feel free to judge all others by myself and to think that there was no doctrine in the world that was of the sort that I had previously been led to hope for. And so, getting the best education available in Europe and observing that this is a time as knowledgeable as any other, and observing that I was as smart and educated as my classmates who were going to replace my own teachers, I have a real problem. I wanted knowledge, but I couldn't get it. There was no knowledge to be found anywhere in my education. And in the next video, the next few paragraphs of the Discourse on Method, We'll have to look at some things he says about what he studied in school and what it did for him and what it did not do for him, and in particular why it did not give him any knowledge, which is the whole problem this book is going to solve, the lack of knowledge, which can be solved and we can get a new method, the right method this time, for getting knowledge. Thanks for watching.